Okay. Welcome everyone to the meeting, regular meeting of June 21st, 2021. Want to thank everyone for joining us online. Thank council members for their attendance and administration as well. So the first order of business tonight is the moment of reflection. And deaths that we had in the community. Rene Cormier, Kathy, is that Dupre? Did I have that right? Kevin Doyle, Arnold Carrier of Beldoon, Lorraine Carrier and Keith Mullally of Lorne, and Monica Furlot Lesota, I believe, who was born in Archibald, and Cora Odette, who was born in Doyleville. So if we could have a moment of silence and a moment of reflection. Thank you, Council. So the next order of business then is the adoption of the agenda. Do we have any additions or deletions or to the agenda this evening? CAO Lee?
Mr. Mayor, I'm going to remove item 716, which is related to the Restigouche Street extension. In speaking with the engineers on the project, there's not a need for this to be addressed right away. It is tied to other elements in the industrial park, which council is going to be receiving some information on in the coming days. So there's not it's not critical that this gets addressed right away. So we'll have this on a future agenda.
Thank you, Lennon. CAO Lee, are there any other additions or deletions by members of council? I actually have a couple of 4 additions actually, but they're only small. 2 are acknowledgements. One is of National Indigenous Day, which is today. Also, the acknowledgements of our graduates. That time of year at BHS and DRHS and our middle schools and our postgraduates. It's a special time for them and want to acknowledge them. Also, there are a couple of meetings that I am attending this week that I just wanted to inform council and get their approval of. And finally, I wanted to, in the closed session, very quickly, it's just, again, something we talked about last week was one of our students. And I had mentioned that last week and I forgot all about it. So if that's going to be a very brief council and we could do that here. So that's the additions that I wanted to make. Anyone else? No? So can we have a mover for the motion to adopt the agenda, M 2021-0621-69? Do we have a mover?
I move that the agenda be adopted as amended with the changes.
Councillor Carmichael approves and moves. Do we have a seconder?
I'll second it.
Second by Councillor Robinson. On the question. All those in favor say aye. All those against, nay. Motion is passed unanimously. Moving on to the statements of conflict of interest. Is there anyone that would like to acknowledge a conflict of interest before we start? No? Okay. Then we can move on to the adoption of minutes of the regular council meeting of May 17th, 2021. Do we have a mover for that motion?
I move that the minutes of the regular meeting of May 17, 2020 be adopted as presented.
Councillor Carmichael moves. Do we have a seconder?
I'll second it.
Councillor Carrier seconds. On the question, All those in favor say aye. Excuse me, all those opposed, say nay. Motion is approved unanimously. Moving on to business arriving from the minutes. Anyone have any business arriving from the minutes that they'd like to acknowledge or refer to? Okay, we can move on to, in terms of presentations, petitions, and delegations, just to let you know, there was something that came across my desk. It was a present, or I believe a petition or a present, it wasn't a presentation, but more in the lines of a petition or, and I believe it came from CN, but I'll do that at a later date. But it was just something that I had received this week. Okay, we're ready to move on to statements by members of council. And I'm going to begin. All of my topics tonight are discussion topics. I just wanted to start with the local governance meeting. Council members are aware that we've had some meetings with members of the provincial government, Ryan Donaghy, Minister Alain, who are in the midst of creating a white paper. They're not at that point yet, but it is basically sweeping changes or amendments to the way municipalities are governed. And it seems to, for the most part, deal with how municipalities will be governed, including LSDs, some larger centers as well. And it seems to be in the very early stages right now. So no one seems to be, at least I'm not aware of exactly what they're thinking about, but certainly the word amalgamation seems to be popping up, and I would assume that that's a given at this point. But also in terms of property tax, and also a very big issue, services. So when there was last Thursday, for the folks at home, last Thursday evening, the government hosted an online session. I believe almost all of council was online in that session as well. And 2 points that came up that I thought were important specifically to us. And I think we need to be proactive in responding to it. One was where we might end up in terms of our geographical situation, and when, is the village of Beldoon going to be closely associated or amalgamated or related to the Bathurst Service District or the Campbellton and Dalhousie one? And I know in 2012, I believe it was 2011 or 2012, they had this discussion, and the decision was that they would go towards the Bathurst Service District at that time. That's going to come up again. And I think as a council, we're going to have that discussion and come to some sort of agreement as to what we think would be best for us, and be proactive in letting the government know that that is our wish, because that's going to be very important. And secondly, the formula that we're presently using to pay for our services. This is a discussion that we had the last council, I'm sure the council before that. We put a lot of money, because of our tax base, we're expected to take on a greater burden, let's put it that way. And no one on council seems to think, in the discussions that I've heard, everyone seems to think that I'm not going to use the word unfair, but it's close. That we seem to be penalized because of the fact that we have a healthy tax base. And so I think we're going to have to be together in our message in terms of what we expect, in terms of the services that are going to come out from this change in local governance. So I would even think that it might be a good idea at some point for us to write a letter with our concerns and with our suggestions to the minister to say, we've had a discussion about this, which I think they're going to appreciate and expect from municipalities. And this is our expectations. So I'm just going to throw it to council for that and see if there's agreement that perhaps we start to have this discussion and come up with sort of some parameters for what we expect. So what we've been doing with this is just going on down the line, but I'll start with Councillor Guitar McDonnell this time.
No, I think a discussion is definitely needed. I think that we have to take into account our whole village and where we will stand on whichever end we go. So I think a discussion, definitely, we have to make decisions. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Carmichael.
Yes, I have the same concern as Mayor Arsenault. What directions are we going to take? It seemed that they're very interested in getting us in the Bathurst area direction. And also, we don't want to lose our voice. We don't want to lose ourselves in that. We want to make sure that we have a strong voice still if they take over, because it seems that it's coming, and I don't know how fast it's coming. So, and yes, we should get together and speak more openly of this and make some decision. Well, I don't know if we have many decisions, but to discuss what we can put out there, all our concerns. Thank you.
Yep, thank you. And I agree, because I think we've been told this is coming sooner rather than later. And I think we don't want to be one of those municipalities that are caught sort of trying to think about these things. And I think that this is really something that CAO Lee will be able to, have a hand in determining what we need, right? So, Councillor Carrier, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I have lots of questions in regards to this issue, some of which are like, what all does that entail? So if we're put with Bathurst, for example, are we put in with their health authority? Are we put in, does it change our school district lines? Does it, what all comes with that? So I think a major discussion has to be had, and hopefully with someone who can answer some of these questions for us.
I agree, and that's also making the assumption that they're going to ask us to go in one or the other, right? Because I haven't seen anything so far that even tells me that they were at that point, right? What if it's not about going with Bathurst or Dalhousie Campbellton, but someone coming with us? Because we're the larger municipality, so that's something else that has to get straightened out, and that's a good question. Councillor Robinson.
Yeah, I think it's really important that we're proactive and take a lead on this, and not just presenting our issues and concerns, but potential solutions for the province. So if we come together with a package to present to the province saying, these are our concerns, this is what we're offering you, as well as so that we have something to come to the table with, besides we don't want this, or this. I know back in, I believe it was 2012, there were discussions about amalgamating with the local service districts and adopting some of those. So that's something the province is very keen on doing. So if we can present those types of solutions or come up with something that benefits all of us in this area. We've got linguistic ties, cultural ties to those communities. So maybe we can build on something like that.
And before I get to Councillor Burke, when you think about it, when you think how many details this takes in, right? All of the services, all of the financing, this is a really big venture on their part. And I think the more municipalities enter into that conversation, I think the better chance that they get it right. Councillor Burke?
Yeah, I agree 100% with all the statements made by my fellow council members. At the end of the day, we need to also keep in mind that the village of Beldoon has already been amalgamated with Jacket River over 20 years ago. So with that said, we are not a follower of this issue. We are in a position to be a leader on this issue. So I do believe that puts us in a very positive position, that we do recognize what amalgamation does for a community. And with that said, I think that the discussions by this council and the leadership of this council will be instrumental in how the outcome of our community is looked upon in the future.
CAO Lee, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Sure, just very briefly, appreciate you putting it over to me, Mayor Arsenault. I totally agree. There were some very valid points raised, proactive, fantastic. I think that there's, Councillor Bork nailed it as well. We're in a position where you could be sort of the leading figure in this. And I think that geographically and service-wise, the evolution of it has almost allowed for you to be in that position. We're already providing fire services to the service districts. We have amenities, we have arenas, we have rec centers that are being used by surrounding LSDs. So I really do, I would agree with the statements by council that we are in a good situation to be proactive on this and be a leader.
Thank you. I would say probably maybe our best bet is to, there are some more sessions that are coming up, and perhaps we'll attain more information from that, but shortly thereafter, I think we need to at least address Mr. Allen with our concerns in written form and documented form. I'll leave it. Does anyone else have a final comment? Or we move on? Okay, let's move on. The next discussion point was council members' portfolio. And so the last couple of weeks, I just, sent, this is a proposal, and the folks at home aren't going to have a great deal of knowledge about what it is and what it entails and what it means. But council members and members of administration should be at this point starting to see what my proposal was about. And I always said through this process, this is not something I'm imposing. In fact, in some of the other municipalities, this is being imposed. This is your portfolio, and they're not even really being asked whether it's something they can do or feel comfortable with. I'm sure they're taking a lot of things into consideration. It's not draconian, but it's a lot less inclusive than the one I'm proposing, because I believe it has to be that way, especially with new council members. So we all know sort of what I'm getting into with this portfolio. There are a lot of portfolios that I'm sort of chopping into blocks of 4 or 5. And I've placed them by the council member's name that I thought would be able to do well with them. And I also tried to, as best I could, explain what it isn't. This is not about taking anything away from administration. In fact, just the opposite. Administration always has to be included and has to be at the forefront of how the village is run and how we run these issues. It's just that I think I use the term working smarter because I believe that it is. I believe this allows council members to focus on areas of specialty and then take initiatives, handle inquiries, deal with things that come up. Now, there was a suggestion by one of the council members, and it was a plausible suggestion that in some of the other municipalities, there were fewer portfolios. So there was one major portfolio per council member, and that's legitimate. That's absolutely fine if you want to do it that way. The way that I thought about that is I thought that it was almost a lot more work for the council members, and I thought there was a lot more overlap between what council members were doing. So I tried to limit that. But if council members wanted to do it that way, that's fine. We'd have to break them up into different categories, but that would work as well. I would rather see that than not see any movement on this at all. But I'm going to throw it out there. And by the way, just so you know, I had a discussion with some people from couple of other municipalities who are doing this. And I said, do I need to bring this to a motion? Said, no. You don't have to bring it to a motion because you're not interfering with the way the regular meetings are run. The motions will still be the same way. It's just the changes is our committee of whole. And because we don't have regulations that are pinpointed to the committee of whole, we wouldn't have to go through a motion. It would just be a show of hands. If council members were okay with it and were happy with the portfolios that were assigned to them, then we could move on. So that's the way I'm going to do it. But before I do that, I'm going to open it up for a discussion and then afterward. And if this is not accepted, that's not going to offend me in any way. I'm just trying to see if we could do something in a different way. And council will need to be 100% behind that. So, yeah, I'm going to open it for discussion, and I'm going to start with Councilor Burke this time and work my way around the room.
Okay, first of all, let me state that I believe the idea is a tremendous idea and a tremendous opportunity, not only for council, but for the village of Beldoon. I believe that portfolios are a way to have council highly involved in our community. I also believe where the issues will arise will be when there are decisions or major decisions to be made. And I am here to state clearly to my fellow council members and the people who are going to have portfolios that their recommendation would have to be so far off to left field for me not to support a recommendation of a councillor who has a portfolio that, and there lies the issue. The conflicts will be that the councillor dealing with the issues must issue reports to the fellow council members so that your fellow council members are aware of the details of the portfolio you're dealing with, so that when conflicts will arise, and I assure you they will, that we as a council are aware of the facts, that it's already been reviewed and evaluated, and if there were questions when the report was issued, that the questions were asked at that time for clarification, so that when decisions need to be made and the recommendation of that council member who has that portfolio comes to the table, all of us are clear on our decisions and the reasons why. And it will take a little more work in the sense of saying that, we've been issued computers, and believe me, this is new for me too. I've served on 3 other councils that we never dealt on the computer. But with that said, I do believe it is a tremendous tool that we can use to our assets. And I even believe this council's getting a picture of it with all the information that comes forward with when you see some of the motions. I mean, it's just unbelievable how much information is attached. So when your recommendations or your reports are made to your fellow council members, it's critical that it doesn't have to be a 50-page report. It has to be factual, cover the important items, and even if you at the end say put in a few comments that how you're evaluating your portfolio and where you're going and what's happening, will be of a tremendous asset to we as a council when decisions need to be made. So I feel very positive on the portfolios, and I look forward to working with my fellow council members on moving Beldoon forward.
Thank you, Councilor Burke. Councilor Robinson.
Yeah, I really support this idea as well. I think it's good to have a concentrated effort on specific issues and one person kind of focusing on particular areas and coming back to council with a report and recommendations. It kind of prevents everybody from trying to do everything, and it still provides an opportunity for other councils to be involved in other activities. If there's something that you're still interested in, that you're not kind of the lead in, you're still able to participate and be involved in those types of things. I'm thinking specifically, just to pull some off, recreation, fitness, events committees. If you're like super interested in the tendering process, there's nothing preventing a councillor from working with the councillor who is kind of the owner of that portfolio. It just concentrates efforts and puts responsibilities on particular people for particular files.
Right, and all of that's true, and it really doesn't change anything in terms of council members bringing issues to the table in terms of motions. And also, let's not forget, it's going to, I think anyway, encourage a lot of partnerships, and also with our administration, it's going to create partnerships as well. Councillor Carrier.
I agree. I think that it gives counselors something to focus on, and I also think it allows people within the community to know who best to contact, depending on what their concerns are. And I think that once this database is up and going, it then also allows a place for all of the information pertaining to each of those portfolios, someplace accessible for all of the other council members who want the information or are interested to know what's going on with it. The information will all be there, and everybody knows where it's kept, and I think it'll be great.
Thank you. And it's a good point you made about the database. That's going to be an important facet too. Councillor Carmichael.
Yeah, it seems interesting. I'm just a little concerned overstepping on the staff because I think because maybe of the past, like sometimes, you try to do work and it's the staff work to do that. As for me, I've been watching meetings. I think I'm going crazy, but I'm watching meetings from other areas, and I watched the St. Andrews meeting, and they do have 6 huge portfolios there, and on each, at the time of their meetings, they discuss their portfolio, and if there's nothing, then they skip to the next one. And they're like the public works, the finance and administration, the business and tourism, recreation and community services, planning and economic development, and the public safety. And I also watched the Bathurst, their first meeting, where I noticed that all they gave everybody on council put on committees, which was that would be different than what we have here. But the committees, some of them were advisory committees and person with disability, parks committees, and like different, that's just to name a few of them. And I found that was quite interesting too, that's how Bathurst was doing it. As for the database, the database seems very interesting, but I'm also thinking there must be other ways to share. We can share documents with the Excel and stuff that we have here, so I don't know if that would work, or that we would have to need a new database, but that's just my opinion on that. So that's all I have to say on that. I want to thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Carmichael. After, when I put, do you want me to add that as another option, doing the one larger portfolio per council member?
We could all discuss it when it comes to the time to actually, I would like to sit around with the group and sit down and discuss all our portfolios, because we could certainly, we had already discussed to share them, so.
Okay, well, this evening, the council members are going to have an opportunity to accept their portfolios, those who wish to accept it. If someone has a question about their portfolios, then I'll allow them to sort of do their bring back suggestions of other portfolios or different portfolios. But I think the idea tonight, if council accepts this, the majority of council accepts it, and I'm going to ask individual council members if they accept it, then they're going to hit the ground running hopefully tomorrow with this. Councillor Guitar-McDonough.
This is definitely a new way of administering different things on the council. It's an interesting format, and I'm encouraged to learn more about it, but giving us each a portfolio that we should concentrate on is good, but I would also like to learn about the other portfolios and see what the other councillors are, involved in and things. So it has to be across the board that we share information for sure. But yeah, this is going to be a different venture, I think. Thank you.
Councillor Cioli, did you want to?
I really don't have too much to add. I think I have an idea of conceptually how this is supposed to work, but I don't know if I really have my head wrapped around the implementation of it and how it's going to unfold, which is fine. It's a council decision, and I'm interested to see sort of the rollout of it. But yeah, no, I don't really have a whole lot to add until I can sort of understand how, you know, the staffs, and I appreciate Mr. Mayor, that you did point out that the administration is going to be involved in this. So I think that I would like to, you know, have a better understanding of what the involvement would be and how this is implemented.
Thank you. I think because we've spent almost a month on this, what we can do is we can move forward this evening, and then I can backtrack, and any council members or members of administration who still have some questions, we can deal with those in a timely fashion. But I'm going to do two things now. I'm going to ask for a show of hands for council members who accept this proposal. And then I'm going to ask each individual council member if they accept the portfolios given to them. And if not, and don't feel afraid of saying, you know, I just want to wait and take a look at mine and have some further discussion on this. But if you're comfortable and you approve it, and we have approved this as a council and as a whole, then feel free to start as soon as possible. So show of hands, those who accept this proposal, council members who agree that this proposal should be moved forward. Show of hands, please. Okay. 3, Councillor Burke, Councillor Robinson, Councillor Carrier agree. 4, Councillor Carmichael and Councillor Guitar-McDonnell against. Councillor Burke, are you prepared to move forward with your portfolios?
Absolutely. I'm, you know, this is absolutely a brand-new approach to how previous councils have been organized and addressed issues within our community. I understand 100% that new councillors are not quite clear as to how much leeway or how much authority they may possess, but we need to keep in mind that council is and always should be the decision makers in this community. I also recognize that staff play a critical part in the success or failure of any council. You know, the issues are very, very simple. CAO Lee reports to council, and the balance of staff report to CAO Lee. You know, our goal is not to disrupt staff in what they are trying to do. Our goal is to basically reorganize, restructure, and have some organization and a plan in place to move our community forward. You know, it's sometimes a very delicate line we walk, but by the same token, you know, do not underestimate your position in this community. People have recognized you as a leader in this community to move it forward and to do it in a professional and business way. So with that said, I just feel, you know, from past experience, that these portfolios are a very, very strong way for we as a council to be able to discuss on a daily basis, you know, where we're going. I agree 100% with some of the statements that are made that, you know, all of our fellow councillors need to be aware of the portfolios we're working on so that decisions are made based on the information that you have in front of you. But do not lose focus on you are the person who is directing our community. You are the person who is going to be making decisions in where our community goes, and you will be accountable to the people on those decisions and the results of those decisions. So I feel very positive about the portfolios, and I believe that it will be a step forward. I would not argue for a moment that maybe 6 or 8 months down the road, we may discover that one counselor has a stronger background in one portfolio over the other, and we can make a shuffle at that time. But with that said, we all need to begin somewhere. And I just feel very, very strongly that, that council members, as we move forward, will find a true comfort zone in where we're headed and where we need to take Beldoon in the future.
Thank you. Councillor Robinson, are you prepared to accept your portfolios?
I'll accept the portfolios that have been assigned. Really looking forward to working with council and staff on moving some of these issues forward.
Thank you. Councillor Carrier.
Yes, I am willing to accept them, and I just wanted to maybe tell you what my interpretation of what you're asking, just to make sure that I'm understanding it right, and hopefully maybe it will clear up some of what others are thinking. But in my mind, what you're asking each of us to do is basically be the contact person so that people know who to go to concerning what matters, or what they want something done about, and then we are then to be able to keep this information and make it available to keep it available to council, bring the information forward, and have it there, to keep track of for future. So, for example, if someone asks for something today and we have it in a portfolio and now we have this documented, and 6 months down the road they come back and say, I asked for this 6 months ago, we now have documentation. We have somebody that is held responsible to say, well, yes, you took it to the right person, you took it to the person who has this portfolio, why isn't anything being done? And that is my perception of it, and is that I just want to make sure that this is what you are asking of us, and to clarify and hope that, because I guess really what the only problem I'm having right now is I'm not understanding what the concerns are from my fellow councillors that are not comfortable with it, and I'm wondering, is there something I'm missing, or is there something that I'm not understanding or that you're not understanding? And also like the points about kind of stepping on staff's toes or whatnot. I don't understand how that is how I foresee this database. It's basically like a filing cabinet. So there's a file folder in that cabinet for each of these portfolios. So any of the information is available to all of us, staff included. So it's a way to keep track of who's working on what and what stage of the plan we're at. And if somebody's dropped a ball, we know who's dropped the ball and we can go to them and say why. And so this is how I'm envisioning it. And if this is how you're envisioning it, then I am all for it. And I also want to add that if Councillor Carmichael is not comfortable with the one of her portfolios for the Trailblazers and ATV trails, I would be more than happy to take that.
I was torn between the. But just also to mention too, just so, and I know that you know this as well, and all the council members know this as well too. When a council member, and if we're talking specifically about an inquiry, when we receive an inquiry for someone, and see, I know, like I said, in the last council, for example, I know 3 different council members who at some point during the term fielded questions about the wharf, right? When really you'd prefer just to have it one. But also remember, we want, anytime a council member is privy to an information, CAO Lee should also be privy to that information. And anytime, and then that goes both ways, right? The person who's in charge of the portfolio will also receive information in real time. And by the time the committee of whole meeting is over, everyone in the village should know about what's been happening in that portfolio. So we absolutely do not want to impose or impede upon anyone in administration or staff. This is just pretty much defining what council members have to do. So with that, I'll turn it over to Councillor Carmichael.
Yes, so I was just really being concerned about understanding completely how to roll out the project completely. I just wanted a little bit more discussion. I have no problem with the portfolio that was sent to me, and I want to move forward with the village. To me, I think we just need to discuss it more as a group and where we're going to go with it. As for the portfolios I have, there's no problem with that. It's just that I was looking at other areas that were doing it differently, and I'm just, wondering in my head, would that work better than what we're doing, or would this be the best way to go? So that was my only thing, that,
Well, I think one way we could maybe sort of deal with what you're saying, because what you're saying is completely fine, is maybe in 6 months to a year, we come back and re-review to see if it's working the way it should. And if it's not working the way it should, then, let's just say we gave it a shot and it's not working the way it should. Councillor Guitar-McDonell.
Well, I thank Councillor Carrier for giving a little bit of insight into this, because that was my issue, because I wasn't sure how we were supposed to approach these. And knowing that we are to be the go-to person, people have concerns about these portfolios, that kind of gives me an insight on that. But yeah, it's interesting. I really, it's a lot of learning to do, but I don't mind being the go-to person for the ones in my portfolio, absolutely not. But like I said, I'd like information about the other portfolios and just to see where they're working on that too. And we also, there is a chain of command here, so I don't want to be stepping on someone's toes either, right? So learning the ropes on these portfolios is very important, and being the go-to person for the ones in mine, I appreciate that.
Thank you. Okay, so I think we have some general agreement. I think we can start, and but we also need to maybe do keep an eye on some of the ways some of the others are doing it, and maybe at some point that might be the way we end up doing it, right? St. Andrew seems to be very happy with that approach, but so if everyone's okay, can we move on to the next topic? Okay, so the next topic is AJN development. And I want to thank, first of all, I want to thank Seo Lee for all the work he's done, and the administration on this. It's a complicated file. It's one they've been working on for over a year now. And so Councillor Carmichael would know this. On April 19th, Mr. Dubé, who is sort of the point person on this for AJN, came into council and did a public presentation. I think that night we also made a motion concerning rental space for AJN. And of course, we have a new turnover of council. And so we have this is an important file, and we have a new council, and we still have some things that are occurring in this particular file. And what I would suggest is that we just put a hold on doing things right now until we have a meeting with Mr. Dubé. Because I think we need to, first of all, have an opportunity to hear from him, have an opportunity to ask him some questions, to see where, this began in May or June of 2020, and we're getting close to a very important milestone that's coming up. And we want to get this one right. This is an important file, and the only way for me that we can get this right is to gather some more information before we do anything further with this. And so I'm going to ask council to sort of give their opinions of that, but if you want mine, I think that any matters relating to this file should have a hold at the moment until we at least have an opportunity to speak with Mr. Dubé, and then follow that up with an opportunity to speak with some of the other I was going to use the word shareholders, but that's not appropriate, but some of the other main characters who are involved in this file. So I'm going to pass it over for discussion and see what council has to say. I'll go through council, Seo Lee, and then I'll get Seo Lee after. So, Councillor Guitar-McDonell.
I'm just, are the rest of the counselors aware of this AJN? You're not. So we would need more information about this. And if there's any ramifications, if we do put things on hold, where we're going to stand with this, okay? But we as a council need more information. And we need to, like you said, you're going to bring the gentleman in, but we have to know more about this file as well before anything, okay?
That makes a lot of sense. I was going to ask, but it's tough for a new council member to sort of answer this question, but in what forum would you say, like, our next step? Because you're absolutely right. We want to have the information. At the same time, we don't want to, take a chance that we're missing the boat on some action, right? We don't want that either. That's absolutely true.
Right.
So in your opinion, what should we do next?
What we need to do is sit down with CAO Lee so he can outline this project to us as a council, a new council, because this has been in effect for over a year, the planning and whatever, but keep us up to date on where we are now and what the next step is going to be. But CAO Lee has that information that he needs to share with us. Absolutely.
That's an extremely good point.
Yeah.
Councilor Carmichael.
Yeah, I think CAO needs to go over quite a few files with everyone to keep us up to date before we go any further with some of these things. For me, what do you mean on hold? Because the way I'm thinking is that they're already in the works. And I'm concerned if we do put it on hold, that we lose the company, we lose the job that's supposed to come with it. I think we should meet with Mr. Dubé ASAP to keep also to inform the rest of the council of where they're at and what their plan is and so on. So I think that would make it easier for everybody. And that's all I have to say on that one. Thank you.
Just before I get to Councilor Kerr, I just want to respond. I'll tell you what my biggest concern is. My biggest concern is we invest, if we need to invest money, that if we are going to invest money, that we need to know that what's coming down, right? What exactly the plans are, if the proposal is still the same as it was, right? And that's really where I'm at with this is, and I agree with both of you. Maybe the thing is we have CAO Lee give that information, and then immediately afterward meet with Mr. Dubé. That's probably the perfect scenario, right?
I wasn't when he came the last time, he didn't mention that he would need any funds or anything. So I think the project is on the go on their own, but they already have the property. So I don't know where they're at. I'm just not knowing where they're at this time. If they're even started the construction of their building, because they were supposed to do the work, start their hiring soon.
Yeah. Okay. It's just, and I'm not even sure, I'm just going to recess with CAO Lee for 1 second. Okay, CAO Lee is going to have more information on one of your points in a minute. Councillor Carrier.
Well, I don't know a whole lot about this file, and I have the same concerns as was already mentioned about, okay, so if we halt the file, what does that mean for the village and for the people who live here waiting on jobs? And then I also have my other mindset is there's 4 people sitting here that have much more information than the other 4 of us have. So at this point, I feel like I have to kind of take the word of the people who know what's going on more so than I do right now. And if the people who have that information think that we need to halt this, then I can get on board with that. But I do think that we need to get this information sooner rather than later. And I think that the scenario that you just said would be the perfect scenario where we would get the information and then be able to meet with this gentleman and have our questions answered. But yeah.
Councillor Robinson.
Yeah, I agree. We definitely need to meet with AJN and CEO Lee. The information that we do have, there are so many gaps and holes, and we really don't know where they are in their process. So it's okay to have a plan a year ago, but where's that plan now? So where are they along their timeline? They should be in construction phase soon. They should be moved into the office building. I don't know if they are or not. So just to know exactly where they are and what their plans moving forward are, because there are a lot of big asks on their part. We need to know the information to know if we're proceeding or not.
Councilor Burke.
Yeah, this can become a very sensitive issue very quickly, but I am going to say it this way. The Village of Beldoon has already invested money in AJN. You know, that I believe council has a copy of that financial report. That is not the biggest issue with me. The biggest issue with me becomes about the development of the road to access the property, which will be discussed later on in this meeting, because when you look at the major investment that needs to be made there, you know, I would feel much more comfortable in, say, postponing those type of investments prior to the budget in 2022. I believe that a lot of funding is going to become critical for us to access, and it's something we're going to need to look at very, very closely. So spending money on developing a road that may not be required in the first place, for me, would be a very sensitive issue. The last statement I will make to that will be that in my history as of being on Beldoon councils, in 2003, Bennett came and did proposals and promised the moon to our fellow citizens of the Village of Beldoon, and they invested major money in developing a business, and at the end of the day, they did not work there one day. They closed even before they started. The next item came down to a company by the name of Maritime Ore. They came and they were going to haul aggregate from the Turgeon Road to the port, talked about jobs and so on, even had council rezone the area, never got a shovel full of dirt off of the Turgeon Road. Then we had Maritime Ore, which came here and had a very nice presentation and everything else, but at the end of the day, you know, again, never got off the ground. And now we have ANJ, who has come and made statements and made commitments and has said various things within, not so much publicly, but to council. And I believe that those things that Mr. Dubé needs to be brought before council so that we can have some of our questions answered. But the other side of the coin is that we have not seen the results of his words, but we certainly, of his actions. We've only heard a lot of his words. So with that said, the sooner we get him before council, in my opinion, the better.
That's so. And Councillor Carmichael, just before I hand it over to CEO Lee, I think what Mr. Burke articulated it speaks to a lot of my concerns too. I think he's probably said it better than I could, but I agree. Those are my concerns too, and probably council shares those as well. So before we wrap up the discussion, and I'll come back one more time, CEO Lee.
So I'm going to applaud council because everyone seems to have the consensus here is that there's not enough information that's been put over to be able to make a decision on this. So I want to applaud council on recognizing that. One of the very first things when we had a new council in was talking about this transfer of data, these files that we're working on. Mayor Arsenault has another one as his next point. Right, there's a lot of information that needs to be moved over from administration to council, and we haven't had an opportunity to do that yet. So council is aware, the format that we are going to be doing that in is when we have Andre Daigle, who's the legal representative for the municipality. He's coming this week Wednesday and Thursday. So while he's doing those sessions, we're also going to have an opportunity to update council on these types of files, which is a great time to do it because Andre will be there. There is, as Councillor Burke had mentioned, there's contracts tied to it, and there's different things that Andre will be able to speak to. You'll be able to ask him questions directly on it. So totally agree with council. There needs to be data transfer that happens so that you have a good understanding of the file. To be honest with you, with AJN, as was alluded to, there's a lot of trickle-down effects that came from that. So there's a lot of other significant files that are tied to that file. So all that information needs to be put over to council. I know there was a lot of debate on the proper format for that. And after talking to Mayor Arsenault and looking at the different options, we figured that the best way to go was to be able to do it in a format where it was kind of an orientation session and have legal there. So if there's any questions from council, we'll do that. So, and then after which I would agree, we reach out to Mr. Dubé because the previous council was the previous council. This is a new council. So there should be no situation or no issues on his part being able to come back in, even if it's just sort of reiterating what he's brought up in the past, but allows this council the opportunity to, answer or ask questions and ask the relevant things that are important to you. So council can expect to get some information on this file along with other files before the end of this week.
Thank you, CAO Lee. So if we have a general consensus, then can we,
Your worship, if I may.
I'll jump in there because I kind of left you hanging. There really isn't a whole lot that we're doing right now on this file most of the stuff that we've done is done. It was the land transfer. As Councillor Bork had mentioned, there is a road extension that was being looked at, but from the onset, that road extension was always tied to the development. That was made perfectly clear to AJN. That road will happen when you are 100% committed to the development of your project. What would be great to ascertain is what is it for council that's going to establish that they are 100% committed to it. And in my mind, it's the onset of the development, right? So when they start that development, then that's kind of the trigger to say, okay, then they're moving forward with this. But to just before you move on that there, Mr. Mayor, there really isn't a whole lot that we're doing on this file. Really, it's with the company now, so the municipal involvement is pretty minimal.
okay, thank you, CAO Lee, for that update. So I think there's a general consensus that we definitely need more information on this particular file. We need to hear from Mr. Dubé, correct? I think what we also need to do, and I've had a discussion with CAO Lee, and this gets in the weeds a little bit, but it's a discussion that needs to be had, is what the definition of development means. And that's not a discussion for tonight, but it is, when you use the word or term development, what does that mean? That's a pretty broad range. So for me, if the development is, what one would expect as it relates to the proposal, that's one thing, that's a positive. If the development is one that does not relate to the proposal or doesn't, we're going to be able to identify, what development means or should mean to this project. And that has to be taken into consideration too. So that's a discussion for another day, but at least we've started it, and I thank council. Councilor Berg, did you have one other thing you wanted to say?
I'd like to put a close to the discussion immediately. I'm going to say it by motion. I'll put the motion out there, ask for a seconder, and then hopefully have a discussion that we can bring forward. So I would like to move. Okay. I move that we put a halt to all proceedings related to this file until we have a meeting with Mr. Dubé.
Councilor Burke has moved his particular motion. Do we have a seconder?
I just have a question. Can we table it? Because if we have a motion, doesn't it take 6 months before we can reopen that file?
No, because his motion just speaks to until council is ready to move
A
on.
meeting with Mr. Dubé.
Yeah. Okay. So we have a motion on the table. Do we have a seconder?
I'll second it.
Councilor Robinson seconds Mr. Burke's, or Councilor Burke's motion. To the question?
Believe we need to have the discussion first. So my purpose to asking for a motion to stop all, all related issues, we as a council have limited resource in trying to deal with companies or corporations or businesses that do want to come to our community. One of the things, we're not here to influence the business or anything of that nature, but at the end of the day, the businesses do come to council asking for such things as rezoning. In this case, they're looking at buying property within the industrial park, and they already have, and so on and so forth. However, by making a motion that all related activities to this file will cease until Mr. Dubé has come before council, will certainly resonate with the company to come before council sooner than later. And I say it that way in the sense of saying that, when you're dealing with companies that are looking at our community, I honestly believe they all have the community and the merit of the business at heart. But business is business and council is council. We don't report to the business. We report to the people and how much money we spend or we give to these businesses or how much money goes in that direction. So my motion is strictly to do with I believe that if Mr. Dubé sees that council is serious in the sense that we are looking for information and that all related activities will cease, that will have a much stronger message than, any other. So that is the purpose of my motion.
Okay, and just for a point of order, Councilor Carmichael did, I'm not sure if she was asking about or proposing to table a motion, or you actually wanted to table a motion. Did you want to table a motion?
I did want to table it. I think Mr. Dubé knows he needs to meet with this council, and I don't think by putting this motion through is going to help in any way.
Okay.
We're just really stopping him from work, which is not right to the company, especially if he's invested probably money already towards the project.
Okay.
Yes, I'd like to see it tabled.
Okay, there will be no further discussion on that. Now I will motion to, do we have a seconder for that motion? Okay, then we don't have a seconder for that motion. We go back to Councilor Burke's motion. Continuing with the discussion, Councilor Robinson.
No, I don't think it's an unreasonable request to have Mr. Dubé come in and to stop. There's nothing going on anyway at this point. So it's information gathering on our part, so I don't have an issue with the motion.
Councilor Carrier.
Like I said earlier, I'm going by the information of the people who have the information, and if there's, we've been told there's really nothing going on, so I think the meeting should happen sooner rather than later, so I guess that's why I'm on board with the motion.
Sorry, Councilor Carmichael.
Well, you already know how I feel on it, so I'm standing by that. Thank you.
Councilor Guitar-McDonnell.
My concern over this is, will there be any repercussions? I just, I know that Mr. Dubé will meet with us, but is CAO Lee to get this meeting underway, or how is this going to work? But we do need to talk about this with everybody here, but my concern is I don't want a ramification because we're halting this, because it's ready to move. My understanding is they're just waiting for this road development or the road extension and, to talk about that. But we need more information, but this company cannot be, halted without, having conversations. That's my concern, that something of this importance being dropped could have big ramifications.
Councilor Burke, you get the last word.
It certainly is good to hear, active debate and hear the concerns of my fellow council members. And in all honesty, I agree with your comments and that type of thing. However, we as a council need to, be proactive instead of reactive. And I mentioned the other 3 businesses that have made major commitments to this community and had major presentations, and they did presentations at the rec center, and everything was hunky-dory, and the day came they never opened the door. So Mr. Dubé, if business is done by business, their decisions of business will not be made how we feel or how we think. At the end of the day, A&J, if it is a viable business venture, will move forward. The only thing we're asking is that for us to move forward on spending a major, major amount of money on road construction and that type of thing, I believe we need to hear that sooner than later. And that's the purpose of my motion, is to say it's not about insulting anybody or anything like that. It's a question of, Mr. Dubé, we need to see you sooner than later. That's it.
Okay, so we've ended the discussion on this particular motion, but I just want to make sure, Councilor Burke, I get it right. So would the motion read, all action related to AJN development is halted until council meets with Mr. Dubé? Okay. All those in favor of this motion, say aye. Okay. All those against, say nay.
I'll say nay, because I think Mr. Dubé is going to come across pretty fast.
Okay, so we have 4 yeas, Councilor Burke, Councilor Robinson, Councilor Carrier, and Councilor Guitar-McDonnell, and we have 1 nay, Councilor Carmichael. Thank you, Council and CAO Lee. Next, broadband. I'll try to move this one along quickly because there's really no, I don't think there's any necessity to put through, well, anyway, let's just move on with the discussion. Broadband, as you know, is again another file that's sort of coming from the old council. And we didn't have the numbers that were related to that particular file were not made public. And on the meeting of March 12th, the reason, if you go back to that meeting publicly, you'll see why. A member of council gave the reason why. I disagree with it. I disagree with it from the very beginning, but I was voted down, and that's where it stands. But personally, for me, it's extremely hard for people in our community to be able to make a decision about the viability of this proposal without having this information given to them. And I know at that March 12th meeting, I was told it's not the final vote, therefore that information need not be made public. That's fair. It's pretty hard to argue, but that's a technicality as far as I'm concerned. I didn't agree with it then, and I don't agree with it now. So I wanted to ask if we could get a consensus from council. I would like, so that I don't jeopardize anything, but I still would like to see this information. There's no reason that more than a year after the first presentation that I was given on this, there is no reason that this cannot, these figures, this information, in my opinion, cannot be released. But so as not to jeopardize anything and so as to go the right way, I would say I would like council to direct CAO Lee to write a letter to our legal counsel asking him if there is any legal or legislative reason we cannot give this information out. Not that it's going to jeopardize anything, not that it's not, in the best interest of the company or in the best interest of the proposal or no. Is there a legal reason these numbers cannot be made public? And that if there is, document it, show me where, tell me where, I can go see this. Because for me, this is way past due. So I'm going to open it to council. I know in the last term when we had these sort of discussions, we would do it by consensus. There wasn't a motion necessary, so I don't see where there would be a motion necessary tonight. But I would like to see that council agree to give that directive so that we can deal with this proposal and get it out there and see if it works or if it doesn't. And if it does, we move on. And if it doesn't, we move on. But I just don't see how the public can make a determination with the information they have now. Are we never to give them this information? When do we do it? Councilor Guitar-McDonnell.
Well, I think CAO Lee can reach out to our legal team just to see where we stand with this. Like, it's what information are you requiring? Is it to show the village where we stand monetarily or how much it's going to cost? But this information, like you said, needs to be, make sure that it's given to us properly and without any legal fight.
Yeah, and I'm not certainly not a lawyer, so I don't want to put anything in jeopardy. But as I've looked at it, I never understood the philosophy behind not. I mean, aren't the people a partner in this? I mean, they have a stake in this. They have a vested interest in this. Why do I, as a citizen, as a person, get to know these numbers and they don't? I never understood that. So, and I don't agree with it. Anyway, that was my reasoning. And you're right, Councillor Guitar-McDonnell. You're absolutely right. What numbers do we need to know, and can we give it, and if we're jeopardizing anything, then I can understand that. But I just believe that people have a right to know at this point. Councillor Carmichael, go ahead.
Yes, it's certainly a complicated file. It's a huge file. But we're meeting with the lawyer on Thursday, and I have no problem if you wrote him a letter. Couldn't we ask him the question Wednesday and Thursday, if that could, instead of writing the letter, because he'll be right here? So, yeah.
Absolutely, that's a good point. We're going to see Mr. Daigle on Wednesday and Thursday. We can pose a question then, Councillor Carrier. But I would ask one thing. It's more than just can we, should we? And I think so far what I'm hearing is, yes, we should, right? So Counselor Carrier, continue.
Okay, so just to make sure that I'm understanding this correctly, previous council hired someone to do a study to see how viable a certain company would be to come in here and offer internet services. Is that correct?
I'll leave that to CLE since he knows that he was in the weeds with it. He understands sort of the minutia of the detail of the negotiations.
Okay.
Okay, so again, it would be a better format to do this kind of with Andre there, where we have it is another big file. I'll try to summarize it as best I can. There was a company by the name of Nova Communications that was doing work with, I believe, a former councillor, Mario Lapointe, I believe, and which was related to First Nations. And they were looking at community broadband, and I think it was specific to rural areas. And Mr. Lapointe had mentioned to Nova Communications about the requirement for higher speed internet in Beldoon. So that was really the onset of it. What happened from there was a proposal came into council to do a study in the community to run a broadband, a fiber connection throughout the community to all facets of every point of the community. So council engaged Nova Communications to do that study. From there, Nova Communications put together I guess you could call it sort of a business model or business study on what it would cost to run fiber throughout the community. And they had also sort of presented the idea of them being Rock Networks is the main company that Nova Communications is under, and they would be the operator of the system. So in other communities, in other jurisdictions, in other provinces, they have the capability of doing that. They can set themselves up as an operator ahead of time. In New Brunswick, procurement-wise, we're not allowed to do that. We're not allowed to assign that ahead of time. It needs to go through an RFP. It needs to go through a process. So because Rock Networks did not have the capability of securing that return on investment, what they had suggested was that they submit an application of funding on the municipality's behalf, but the business plan behind it was their proprietary information. They would retain that so that if it was a project that this council deliberated on and decided to move forward with, they would have their data to be able to sell that if we issued an RFP to move forward with the project, they would at least have some information that they would be able to sell to the successful bidder to recover some of the costs associated that they put into the phase 2 part of the study. So very high level, it's what it is it's a project to try to run broadband throughout Beldoon to all areas of Beldoon. It would give all residents the capability of access to high-speed internet. To Mayor Arsenault's point, what hasn't been disclosed and what's been put over in confidentiality is the cost that the municipality would be on the hook for. And that's a huge thing, right? That's a big component is determining, and that part of it would be determined by how much funding was available through the federal government, right? So once they knew how much funding they would receive from the federal government, that would ascertain how much contribution would be done by the municipality. So very high level, that was sort of what this project is. I don't have my files in front of me. If we again, this is something that we'll bring up when Andre's there. Andre, and to your point, or to the discussion point that we're having right now, Andre was very involved in the entire process, so he would easily be able to answer your questions around what we are or are not allowed to do. So he's very versed on it. So again, when we visit him. When he comes here later this week, then we can certainly pose those questions to him. But that, in a nutshell, that's kind of what the project was. It's really trying to deliver a broadband service to all of Beldoon.
So has this, like, has the village already spent money on these companies? And that's what we're trying to figure out as to the costs that we're allowed to let everyone know about?
The village has spent, and I don't know the numbers right in front of me. The original study, which was done, which was a kind of a GIS study where they map out the community, the village has paid the company for that. And I want to say it was maybe a $25,000 or $30,000 investment to do that study. And then, sorry,
I was just going to say that, that I did look it up, and if you're going to release 30,000, it was $30,935. Legal fees were $3,289.01, which means the Village of Beldoon has invested $34,224.01 to date.
perfect, $34,000 we've invested to date. So, yes, and then the continuation of that study, the company would only recover the money that they put into the phase 2 component. That was for phase 1. That was the study, yeah. The money that the company would insert into the phase 2 component, they would only ever recover those funds back way down the road if you decided to move forward with the project. The way that this is structured is that there was not a commitment to move forward with the project. The commitment to move forward would have to come from this council. So when the funding is applied for, and when the funding is, it has been applied for, my understanding, when the funding was approved, if it was approved, at that point, the company would reapproach council, this new council, with an updated figure. They would know how much the community was receiving from federal funding. They would know how much money would need to be supplied to complete the project, by the municipality. And from there, you would have a much better understanding of what the contribution would be.
So basically what the village has so far paid for is an estimate?
What the village has paid for now is the survey. We've received GIS data, and there was the submittal package that was done through the federal government is essentially what has been paid for.
So I guess what my question is why would those figures not be able to be released, and why would we even need legal clarification? If the village needed a tractor and they went and they got an estimate on a tractor, would we need legal advice to find out as to whether or not we were to release the estimate of the price of a tractor?
I'm gonna suggest that if you're getting into that level of detail, you run it through Andre Daigle. I'm gonna have a difficult time answering that. So from the way that it was sort of presented to me, and the way that Andre sort of explained it to council, was that them disclosing that information is that they would want to retain that information, because putting it out there is putting it out to the public for their competitors to see. So what they're doing is they're securing the confidentiality of it so that it's not being released to their competitors. That was the concern from their side, is that if they put a business plan together for this, then they would not want to release the specific numbers, because there was an issue that they could potentially lose. There was the impact of a financial loss or gain for them, which is one of the things that triggers information being shared in confidentiality.
So that sounds like a them problem and not an us problem.
Okay, well, yeah. Councillor Robinson.
So the application has been submitted to the federal government for funding? Did I understand that correctly?
Yeah, I believe that the application was, yes, I believe it was submitted a few months ago, and I think they expected that the application was going to be decided on in around the month of August, I believe. So it should be within the next few weeks that there's going to be a determination. But yeah, I believe that the application has been submitted. That was done a couple months ago. But I certainly don't mind to, again, this is another file where I would suggest to council, get this company back in. Get them back in to do a presentation. Whatever was done with the previous council was the previous council. And I would suggest get them back in and they could, again, for us, I can speak to it a little bit just because we were involved in the process, but they're a private entity. This is something that they approached us on, so they would have to speak to it. They could definitely answer the questions a lot better than I could.
Okay, so my next question then is, the application is submitted to the federal government on behalf of the Village of Baldoon. So essentially, it's the Village of Baldoon's application. Is that correct? Or is it in the name of Nova Communications?
I need to double check. I think that I want to say that it was submitted by Rock Networks is actually the parent company, but yeah, Nova Communications is. So I want to say that it was submitted with the authority of the Village of Baldoon by Rock Networks. So I don't know if it was in our name or if it was in their name. I would need to double check. I would probably I would have it in the files, but I'll need to double check it.
Okay, so as you're checking that, then can you also check if the application is in the name of the Village of Baldoon? So if we're the applicant, does that application become public record? So it has to be released to the public if they're asking for it anyway.
Okay, thank you. And yeah, we'll get that. Good questions, good points. Councillor Burke?
The first statement I guess I'm going to make is I'm going to apologize to council. This file was something that I had asked CAO Lee for information on, and Clerk Treasurer Cormier also sent me some information on. So I had some information maybe that the rest of council did not have in front of them. And the reason I apologize is that I didn't forward it to you so that you would see it and share it. I should have, but I didn't. With that said, the first thing I looked at was phase one. I have a major issue when a parent company is getting a recommendation from another company within the parent company as to what the feasibility is. They sent information in and they outlined how many customers they need and how much money it would cost and how many dollars per month it would be and so on and so on. Very informative type thing, but the number is staggering. And with that said, I will leave it at that and say the sooner we get these people back in here, the better. I will agree with that statement, and the sooner we have a discussion with our legal department on the issue will be much better. But again, I've seen the numbers, and I apologize. I mean, I know council is aware that I had a tough week here in the last week, but with that said, I don't want to make that an excuse for not forwarding that information on to the rest of council. And I will say that within a few days, I will send that information to you. Okay?
Thank you, Councillor Burke. So I think there's a consensus that I guess what we would ask CAO Lead to do was to ask the Rock Company to have a meeting with us, right, where we can ask some more questions about and try to attain some of the information. Is everyone okay with that? That we do that? Okay. Okay, that's a great discussion. I'm going to delete my last one just because I have a meeting tomorrow concerning the Baldoon generation stage. It's not one that's totally related to this, but there's going to be a gentleman there that I'm going to have an opportunity to speak with. So I'll bring at the committee of whole meeting. And since Councillor Burke has accepted that portfolio, I'm going to invite him because they've been asked me if there was a representative from the village that they could come along. So
What time is that meeting?
it's at 12 here.
Here at 12 o'clock?
Yeah. So that'll be with, I think, Gordon McDougall is a committee representative, and he's chairing the meeting. Okay, so, but I did have four, and I'm going to go through them quick because I want Councillor Burke to go through his. So today is National Indigenous Day, and an extremely important day. A lot has happened recently that just, very significant and very profound. And so today, I think, has special meaning. But I would like us to all acknowledge National Indigenous Day. And if any council members want to say a quick thing on that, please feel free. Also, I wanted to acknowledge our local graduates, post-secondary, high school, middle school, even our little kindergartners, they have their graduation day too. It's a big week for them, and considering the year that they've gone through, just a great accomplishment on their part, and just grace and style, and wish them the absolute very best. And in a post I wrote yesterday, just wanted to say to them, we're very proud of you, but don't forget your hometown when you're doing great things, whether you're away or you're here. Okay, we're very proud of you. Meetings, I just wanted to get council's approval. Tomorrow meeting I just mentioned to you. I also have a Regional Service Commission meeting on Thursday night, and a meeting with an Opportunities New Brunswick representative on Friday. So just bring that to your attention, and at the Committee of Whole Council, I'll report on those. And that's it for me. Thank you for your patience, and I appreciate the great discussions and contributions by council on the items that I brought forth. Councilor Burke, is your first one a motion, Councilor Burke?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so we're gonna get right to the motion, and then we'll have an opportunity to discuss after it has been seconded. So let me just bring that up.
I'd like to propose that CAO Lee find a firm to be able to conduct a forensic audit on all expenses and costs for the municipal building renovations at 2471 Main Street.
Do we have a seconder for the motion?
I'll second it.
Councillor Carrier seconds the motion. To the question. Let's open it up for discussion. Councillor Burke.
Okay, this was a very sensitive issue for many in the public during the renovations of this building and the results. So I have those figures, and I am gonna disclose them right here, right now. So with that said, in 2017, the council of the day spent $1,202,057.35. In 2018, $2,609,609,005.91, and in 2019, $193,173.49, and in 2020, $651,178.99, making a total of $4,655,415.74 of taxpayers' money spent on renovating this building over that 4-year period. I do not have the figure for 2021 to date, but I will say I will be asking for that figure to turn around and disclose it at the next public meeting. I will say it this way, that with this new council, Clerk Treasurer Cormier was extremely busy issuing a lot of information, and but on the other side, I may have forgot to ask for 2021, but I will say that I will add it at this moment in time and ask for it for clarification in the very near future. But as it stands at this moment in time, as of at the end of 2020, there is $4.655 million in this building. So, it amazes me how a renovated building can get into so many dollars so quickly. I've looked at how it was financed, and I will give credit of the day that the way that they approached it through the gas tax fund and the using some of our general reserve, that a lot of issues made a lot of sense in dealing that way, so they deserve to be commended that way. But the other side of the coin is that there is a lot of people in the public who have asked a tremendous amount of questions on the feasibility, the accountability, the cost of this facility. So to put all of that to rest, I mean, whether there is nothing, no discrepancies, that allows us as a council to say that we have had it checked, and at the end of the day, everything was done legally and above board.
Okay, so we'll go around council table. Councilor Guitar-McDonough. No.
I have a concern over this. I checked into what a forensic audit is, and in the explanation that I got was that you are trying to look for criminal activity. I don't get that, but anyways, you have the figures in front of you, and you have the dollar value, and I just wonder who you're trying to target here. Like, I'm not getting why you want a forensic audit done when we have a yearly audit every year, and now you're looking for something else. And how much is something like that going to cost?
Just 1 second. Just Councilor Guitar-McDonough, we have to be very careful. That's bordering on an accusation. I understand where you're coming from, but we have to be extremely careful in how we portray the motives of someone else's motion. I just want to make sure that that's understood. I'll leave you go. I'm not trying to impinge on your discussion. Just we have to be extremely careful when we question the motives of other council members. So I'll just leave it at that, and you can continue your discussion if you wish.
Well, that was the explanation that I received when I looked for that, what a forensic audit was, and literally that's what it said. So I'm just wondering what you're hoping to uncover, and how much is something like this going to cost?
Okay, so Councilor Burke can answer that at the end. He'll have an opportunity to address that. Councilor Carmichael.
I also wanted to know what a forensic audit was, so I went online. And before I make a decision on this, I just want to know, what are we looking for in this audit? What are we expecting the CEO to ask for this audit? I don't understand what we want to find. We have all the numbers and details in front of us, and the clerk treasurer has all of the, I'm sure, all the breakdowns to it. Everything is audited already per year, and again, why would we spend taxpayers' dollars on something that is already done in the building here or in this office? So that is my concern.
Thank you. Councilor Carrier.
So it's my understanding that a forensic audit means that you don't just look at the numbers as to what was spent. So for example, $10,000 on Christmas lights, it's actually looking for the receipts for $10,000 worth of Christmas lights so that you absolutely know where the money went, where it was spent, and what it was spent on. So I think that is what Councillor Burke is looking to see, and I myself am also interested to see where exactly the money was spent when we've spent over $4 million on a building that's only half done. So I don't know how much it costs. Maybe I will change my mind when I see the costs, but as it stands right now, how did we manage to spend over $4 million on a building that's only half done? We've only got 2 spaces into it that are being rented, so even the space that's across the hall from my office is not finished. The whole end down here is wide open and not finished. The cafe is not up and running. Like, I have a lot of questions where that money was spent, and I think that we deserve answers. And I think that maybe there was no criminal activity, but if there was, I think we should know about it.
Okay. We have to measure our words carefully. I don't take issue with anything that's been said so far. Just, we have to make sure that when we discuss about motives, that's where we have to be extremely careful. So far, so good. Counselor Robinson.
Okay. Yeah, I think maybe forensic audit isn't the proper term or what exactly we're looking for. No offense, Ron. Perhaps a project audit, operational audit. We need to look at what information we're trying to garner from the audit. So I thought long and hard about what should we be looking at, what in terms of, because it's not just finances. This project clearly went sideways somewhere. We've got a $4.5 million project and half a building. There's problems that the public can identify, that we as council can identify, that staff can identify. So I think maybe that's the type of audit that I would like to see, and figure out what weaknesses there were in the chain, where it went wrong. So I don't know that looking for a forensic audit is necessarily what we're looking for, but come up with some of the goals of an audit. So are we just reviewing finances? We need to evaluate the risks. Are we following proper policies, procedures, regulations in the way these projects are being, I don't know, even approved? Some of them, there's not a business case to be made, and an audit on the entire operation perhaps, and the way things are brought to council may be a better way, a better way to do an audit so that we can move forward with all projects, not just identify this one as a major, major issue. There's going to be others.
Counselor Burke.
Yeah, some of the points are valid. To ask what I'm looking for, all I'm looking for is peace of mind. I have no hesitation in saying that literally dozens of people have had discussions with me on this facility. It comes down to that this type of an audit, and I agree with the statements of council that maybe forensic may not have been the right word, but it is a question that my motive is basically to say that we have had all the confirmation that the facility was done properly, legally, and the funding spent was done with all the justification, and I can confirm it because we've had it done. Asking as far as the cost is concerned, well, I just gave you a figure of $4,655,415.74 to the end of 2020. 1% of that is $46,000. So we spent 100% of $4 million, $4.6 million, 1% being $46,000, if that's what the audit cost, would be a small price to pay to confirm that all things were done properly, legally, and putting this issue to rest with the majority of the people in the public.
Okay. Because of the importance of this discussion, I'm going to allow, does anyone have any additional comments before we move on to the vote? Councilor Carmichael.
Again, yes, I understand where you're coming from on your point of view. Any old building that you're going to work with, you're going to run into problems, and there were problems. But all the paperwork and the trails are here. Why would we pay $40,000 to $50,000 of taxpayers' money for the information that we already have to see, we already have here, that just needs to be dug up? And I'm sure everything, all the paperwork is here in the building.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, we have a motion on the table. Councilor Robinson.
Sorry, so can we amend the motion to not call it a forensic audit? Or table it so that we can discuss what type of audit, what information that we as a council are looking for, so that we know we're all on the same page on that one?
I believe the answer to that is yes. We would need to, I guess you're changing the wording of the motion. So you would have to put that forward. I'm still a little bit hazy as to whether or not we need to vote on this first motion first before we amend, or can we do the amendment now?
I believe it depends on if she wants to change the wording, it would be an amendment. But if she's asking to table the whole discussion, that would be a
Right.
different motion.
Are you, so let's get a clarification. Are you asking for an amendment or are you asking to table?
I think at this point, we should table it and have a discussion as a council of the type of audit that we would like to have, what information we're trying to gather, and proceed from there.
Okay, Councillor Robinson is making a motion to table. Do we have a seconder?
I'll second it.
Councillor Carmichael seconds the motion. Again, on the question, or can we just move on to the vote? We'll move on to the vote. All those in favor of tabling, say aye.
Aye.
All those against, nay. Unanimous. We will table it and have further discussion. Thank you, council. Councillor Burke, your next one, I believe, is the building purchases, local businesses.
Again, I just wanted to have a discussion with this. Unfortunately, I missed the committee of the whole meeting, and, I just didn't want to have it drop off the sites. With that said, I again had a file sent to me as to the local purchases of our community. I don't want to go through them one at a time, but at the end of the day, I will say it this way. In 2019, the Village of Beldoon spent $410,536.30 at our local merchants. 2020 being the year of COVID, it dropped to $218,711.37. And I have no hesitation in saying that I do believe that is a reasonable and a substantial amount of money and shows some very strong support for our local merchants. I think at this stage, the only issues that need to be dealt with is maybe if we had just a little bit better planning done that to give our local merchants an opportunity to bring in the material that we need so that instead of running down to Bathurst or Petit Rocher or Beresford to pick it up that day, maybe if we had the planning done in a week's time or something like that, that would give our superintendent or CAO Lee the opportunity to advise whatever merchant could supply that product or merchandise an opportunity to bring it in, and we would buy it local. And that's exactly where I was going with this, and I thank the clerk treasurer for that information. So with that said, I don't have a motion on that at this moment in time, but I certainly do hope that the councillor responsible for that portfolio has a serious look and discussions with CAO Lee to do a little bit better planning so that the local has a chance to bring in the product required or the stuff we need.
Thank you, Councillor Robinson.
Yeah, I agree. We should be buying local as much as possible. The numbers supporting local, and the village does that. I don't know how it would compare to, because we don't have the outside vendors, say Bathurst or non-local competitors, but I mean, really, the village does support our local businesses. And like Councillor Burke said, if we can be a little more, I don't know, plan further ahead, then we could be using them probably a little bit more to their advantage.
And this is, will be Councillor Carrier's portfolio. So, Councillor Carrier, if you have some thoughts?
Yes, I think one major issue too in one of the things that hinders us to be able to support local in some areas is that we don't even have a current up-to-date list of what businesses are available here in our region or in our village. So I think that's one thing that we need to get, get a better relationship going with our local business owners and, get that list and get those businesses on our website. And, if there are things that we can be utilizing here with our local businesses, we absolutely should be. I think that there should be, and maybe there already is something in place that, if we're looking to compare costs and we're looking for estimates or that type of thing, if a local business comes within a specific or predetermined percentage, then they get it over the other business simply because they are local and they live here, they spend their money here, they pay taxes here, and I think that they, so I think these are some things we need to look into, and yeah.
And I think, in the last council, we had a discussion too. I think that the key word there is relationship. I think that will create, once we sort of build that, and it's not to say that it's not there. I think there's an attempt in the last council, a bona fide attempt in the last council to try and do that, but there's always more room for improvement, and I think that's where we need to start. Councillor Carmichael?
Yes, I think we're all on the same page that we think we should buy local. And I think we need to work with our local businesses to maybe, come closer to the prices that we can purchase. I know they're not going to come right down to the same price that we would be able to buy it in Bathurst, but, a little compromise so that we can wheel and deal and come to as close as possible. You don't want to overpay for anything either, but you want to have a fair price on everything we purchase. That's just my opinion on that.
Councillor Guitar McDonnell?
I know that they had been working on a list for the local businesses. It's been in the works for a little while. It just needs to be finalized for sure, and then we can move forward with that.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Burke, did you have a final word? Are you ready to move on?
I'm ready to move on.
Okay, thank you. Your next topic, I believe, is the ATV trail and the meeting with Mr. Willett.
Well, again, I put that on the committee of the whole meeting, and I didn't want it to fall by the wayside, but I am perfectly happy with that a councillor has been appointed that portfolio. So I'm just going to leave it at that and allow them to move forward with that portfolio. So at that time, I didn't know how that was going to develop, but as of today, each council member has been given a portfolio, and I have all the faith in the councillor who has that portfolio that will be bringing positive information forward in the very near future. So I'll leave it at that.
Before CAO Lee would like to say something. If no other council member has anything to say, we'll just pass it over to CAO Lee.
Sorry, just real briefly, I have actually reached out to Jacques Ouellette, and he does actually have some updates that he is looking forward to moving over to council. So we're going to arrange for a virtual session. It seems the consensus seems to be more in the evenings when people are more accessible. So I've let Jacques know that. He's just going to shoot me his schedule. This week's kind of filled. We've got a lot of stuff going on already with local governance and meetings with Andre. So we're probably going to be aiming for sometime next week.
Okay, so we'll just continue going around. Councillor Robinson?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to meeting with Mr. Ouellette and find out where they are with this project and see it move forward.
I know it's not your portfolio, but Councillor Carrier, this one I know is important to you.
Yes, I am very much looking forward to finding out what is going on with these trails. I want to be on them, I want to be using them, I want to be bragging about them, so bring on the meeting. Okay.
And Councillor Carmichael, this is your portfolio, I believe, is it not?
It is, and I'm like Council Cartier, we want to get this started, we want to get moving, we want that bridge. So yes, I'm looking forward to a meeting with Mr. Willett.
Councillor Guitar McDonnell?
I unfortunately don't use the trails, but I'm eager to find out all about them and where we stand with this, and I've heard a lot about this bridge, so I'm interested in meeting with them as well.
Okay. Thank you, Council. Next, Councillor Burke, Village Snow Removal Program.
Okay, I know that one of the biggest issues with all council members will become during a storm that DTI did not get to my road. I've been a day and a half without having my road cleared, and so on and so on and so on. We have, I'm going to say, a dozen roads within our community that have very unique type of wind conditions that create major problems for those residents. I'm also aware that we do blow out the road, Furlot Road. We do hire a contractor to blow up the Furlot Road. That's the new road between Gagnon. I believe DTI plow it from Gagnon to Furlot, and then a contractor comes in and blows out the balance of the Furlot Road. With that said, if I don't want to pick on one street or another, but I do know of some streets that have major issues, and I don't want any of the public to get all worked up that I didn't mention their street, but I do want to use a major example. If I were to say Monsignor Gooden Street, I mean, just an atrocious street in our community. Veteran Street, Legacy Street down in Armstrong Brook. Even if I were to say Chaleur Drive within the subdivision where people are trying to get out to work. So with that all said, my proposal or my train of thought is basically to have the contractors, and we have all of the contractors we need within our community to be able to produce this function and say, those 3 streets are looked after by that contractor, and these 3 streets are looked after by that contractor, and these 3 streets are looked after by another contractor, so that we're not showing any favoritism or whatever, and we go out for tender. I believe this should be done on, let's say, for example, an hourly basis, or it could go out for full tender for the winter. But with that said, it's a question of having a blower go in after the storm, or let's say at 4 o'clock in the morning, because people need to get to work. And we as a council cannot control that once they hit Main Street at the end of the day, if Main Street is blocked, it's blocked. There's nothing we can do. But they do look at us as taxpayers on the side streets, saying that those streets are blocked for sometimes a day and a half, 2 days. So, well, I'm getting a signal sometimes 3 days. So all you've done is solidify my train of thought. So with that said, all I would like to do is say, have a committee put together to evaluate this, and my point is that all I would require or request from a contractor would be 1 cut up the street and 1 cut down the street, and you're done. You're not there to blow out driveways, you're not there to modify things. It's a question of, that you're gonna clear the street so that somebody can clear their own driveway, get out onto the street that they live on, and get to Main Street so that they can go to work. Now, if Main Street is blocked, we have a much different scenario there, and that type of thing. So anyway, I do know that for years I traveled Main Street at 5:30 in the morning, and DTI were always pretty good at having that road cleared. They were not good at the side streets, but they were pretty decent at having Highway 134 cleared. So I'd just like to see a committee put together and evaluate the situation and come back to council with a recommendation.
Okay, thank you. Because we're knocking at 9 o'clock, council members, I'm just going to ask if anyone has something that they would like to add, then Councilor Carmichael.
Yes, I'm all about hiring our local, but I'd like to meet also with DTI to see how they work things and how they just make their decisions. So, before we go forward with that, how do they pick the contractors? Because last winter, that was one of the problems. So that is one of the things I'd like to do would be DTI before we decide to go forward with this, but it is a good idea, so thank you.
Just, Councilor Burke, before I finish. In the portfolios, we have public safety on the portfolios, and Councilor Burke and I are sharing that portfolio. So what I would like to see happen is perhaps we initiate the discussion and then have council come in on those meetings once we initiate, and you're right, DTI needs to be included, all the major shareholders need to be included, and then once we get them all in the room, find out what works for everybody, right? And the communication lines because the days of the storms, the biggest issue is the communication lines. And this is where I'll give CAO Lee just an unbelievable amount of credit, because I've emailed him or messaged him at 11 o'clock at night, at 8 o'clock in the morning. He's going to get back to you, and he's going to take care of the issue. But, you know, what if he's not available? I mean, it's tough to ask someone to be available 24/7, right? And you take that storm in March, that was 3 days long. That's a lot to put on his shoulders. Or if we had a more structured system, then it would probably work a little bit better. But all congratulations to him, because he saved us a number of times over the last 3-4 years. I can tell you that. Councillor Burke, I'm going to ask you something. The last one, because of the time, and Councillor Robinson hasn't even had hers yet, plus administration. Could we put your last one on the committee of whole?
I don't need it there. It was already discussed, and I'm comfortable with the way it was. I had it on the motion, on the agenda. I'm comfortable with it, so that's fine.
If I asked you to put it on the committee of whole, would you do it?
Sure,
Okay, I'd like you to, because you're very knowledgeable in that, and I think council would appreciate it. So Councillor Robinson, you're up.
Okay, just have a simple motion dealing with the committees and boards that either members of council or members of the community fill. Should I just read the motion first and then go to discussion?
Yeah, just read the motion and we'll,
I motion that council review the list of committees to determine which are obsolete or inactive, evaluate remuneration, eligibility, accountability, and reporting to council, and to update the bylaws as necessary.
okay, so we have motion M 2021-0621-74, moved by Councillor Robinson. Do we have a seconder?
I'll second it.
Councillor Carmichael seconds the motion. To the question, open for discussion. Councillor Robinson.
Yeah, just looking at the list of numbers of committees that we have and numbers of boards, just so council knows sort of where we have people, what their roles and responsibilities are. Some of them are by bylaws, some of them are boards that has gone through motions or whatever, just so that we can evaluate, because some of them don't meet at all. So do we still need to be, does it still need to be on the books, or can we just kind of delete those from our files or whatever? So that's all I want to do is review all of those committees, all of the boards, figure out which ones we need to continue with, figure out which ones are obsolete, and make the adjustments as necessary.
Okay, that's a great segue into Councillor Guitar McDonnell, who has community events under her portfolio.
No, I agree that we need to review the list and to go through them to see which ones are active and which ones are not, and then remove them as well. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Carmichael.
Yes, we need to review them, and also the remunerations. That's a tongue tie right now. And we need to sit, are you suggesting in scheduling a meeting and media soon for this, or an orientation, or whatever you want to call it?
Councillor Robinson?
Yeah, I'm all for meetings sooner rather than later. I know we have requests for board members, for committee members, that sort of thing. So yeah, the sooner we can identify which ones are still active and which ones we're still supporting, I guess.
Do we have all the information we need in order to do that? Do we have our list, and are we at this point, are we able to have that discussion?
Clerk Cormier provided a list with of what committees we have, including the bylaws, and there's a list of boards that the council does have members.
Okay, Councillor Carrier.
I agree. I think it's something we need to look at and figure out, and yeah, I'm on board.
Councillor Burke.
Yeah, agree 100%. In fact, I'm curious on a personal note. I represented the Crime Stoppers unit for the last 20 years, and I represented the village of Beldoon proudly. I will say that I considered it an honor and a privilege to do so throughout the unit, And I am very curious to see where we go with a lot of these committees. So sooner the better.
Two things. First, I need to apologize to CAO Lee. I haven't been calling you at the end of the discussions. So I want to make that, part of our routine. So if you feel the need to jump in, please do. Secondly, I was thinking about this. This is going to be a time-consuming effort to go through all of these and determine if we want to do a good job with them, right? So I think we're going to have to figure out how we're going to do it, like what's the best way to do it, right? Because I don't think we want to do this one quickly. I don't think we want to rush through it. So, in the next few days and weeks, what have you, think about the best format for doing this, because as we start going down these lists and we start asking questions about remuneration versus non-remuneration, how do people get on committees, what committees are relevant, what committees are not, it gets to be quite an exercise, right? So we might want to think about that, but it's definitely it's due time, for sure. So we had a motion on the table, I believe. Let me get to that motion. So I'll be with you in 1 second. So motion M 2021-06-21-74, which speaks to the review of list of committees. We've had a mover and a seconder. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say nay. Unanimous, carried unanimously. And so, thank you. We move on to administration reports. CAO Lee.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to try my best to get through these items as quickly as we can. I know that we're getting late in the evening. My first item is for the social environmental grant, which is essentially our donations that we receive in. So for the month of June, we did receive in 2 requests. One was from a donation request that went to the St. Joseph Heritage Site. And the second was for the use of the Recreation and Cultural Center, our rec center here in Beldoon, for a funeral service. Just so that council is aware, we do have a policy that is tied to our donations. So any donation that comes in has a maximum allotment of $250, and the general consensus is if it's more of a community type or very regional base, then that would usually result in a higher donation amount than a request that came in where they might have the capability of generating funds on a larger scale, or they might not necessarily be from the region. So council certainly does have the capability of applying more than the policy. The limitations that I have are to the policy, but if council did want to make a motion separately to apply more, they certainly can. However, if council is okay with the recommendation as it pertains to the policy, the motion is drafted, so there would just need to be a mover and a seconder.
Thank you. Do we have a mover for the motion 2021-06-21-75?
So moved.
Thank you, Councilor Burke. Do we have a seconder?
I'll second it.
Councilor Carmichael seconds. On the question?
I have a question.
Sure.
The St. Joseph, they're asking for the rec center for funerals. Don't they have a building or, eh? Okay, I'm sorry. I was informed. That's okay.
Okay. Are you okay with moving on, Councilor Carmichael? Okay.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Councilor Burke.
Okay, a couple of things there, just so that we're on the record. We have a $50,000 budget here for social and economic grants. This is our first time looking at the budget as a council. $39,950 is already spent. So we have a balance of $10,050. I just wanted to make it clear that, you know, I don't want the public to think that we've got a whole lot of money left here. If the public are interested in accessing some of that funding, they should apply sooner than later. The next comment I'm going to make pertains to Councillor Carmichael's comment about the CWL. You know, just a fantastic organization. I am very proud to say that with the closure of the rectory at the church, you know, the Royal Canadian Legion allows the CWL at St. Gabriel's Church to use our rec center for funerals, receptions. So, and we do that at no charge, but I will also add that the CWL always makes a generous donation to our Legion. So with that said, it's not because we charge them, it's because they're just a fantastic organization to deal with, and you know, use of the rec center here, I think is also a tremendous idea.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Burke. Are there any other comments? Any council members wish to make additional comments? Okay, well,
I
Councilor
just
Carmichael,
wanted to clear, like, I didn't know the reason, it's because they have the building, but I was informed that it's because they're renovating I didn't have a problem giving them the thing, I was just wondering why they were asking.
Okay, thank you for your clarification. So we have a mover and a seconder. All those in favor of this motion, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say nay. The motion is approved unanimously. CAO Lee, you can continue.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My next item is for the residential grant applications that came in. So I put this information over to council in an email just to reiterate and briefly for those watching. This is a grant that was put in place by the previous council that was specific to people who were purchasing their primary residence in Beldoon. And if they're moving to Beldoon, they were applicable for this residential grant. The grant is 2.5% of the assessed value of the home, but if they have a child under the age of 16 that live in the home, then they're eligible for 5% of the assessed value. So we did receive in, and again, there's a policy in place for that. The numbers associated to this recommendation stem directly from that policy. So there was 2 applications that received in. One from Robert Norris, the other one for Raymond Patterson. And there is motion 21-76.
Thank you. Do we have a mover for this motion, -76?
I move that the accordance with the Village of Beldoon Economic Development Bylaw, number ED-01-2019, and the Residential Grant Policy Council accepts CAO Lee recommendation and approve the following grants. $5,370 to Robert Norris and $1,830 to Raymond and Margaret Patterson.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Guitar McDonnell. On the question. Okay, let's, oh, sorry, Councillor Burke.
I didn't know if Councillor Carmichael was going to speak first. I don't know everyone in the village, but this Robert Norris, did they move here from somewhere?
I'm not sure. I want to say that that his wife might be from here. I really don't know the details on it. I've got all the information on the property that they've purchased. I don't have the information on where they came from.
But they moved into the village of Beldoon.
Yes, yes. Oh, yes. This is only specific to Beldoon. So this is for a resident if they move into Beldoon.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't agree with that statement because we've had examples where residents sold their house, turned around, bought another house, and got paid. So with that said, that's why I asked the question. I'm not familiar with their names. I'm just wondering if they moved into the village of Beldoon, and I have no problem with the policy, provided it is executed that way. Okay?
I actually kind of do have a problem with the policy. I agree with you 100%.
Well,
I think the policy should be reviewed exactly for that instance.
Well-
And also, the intent of it when the previous council was discussing, and I did note this in an email out to council, there was also supposed to be a provision for new homes, and that the way that the policy is worded, it's specific, it really makes it seem like it's for the purchase of a home and not for a new home build. And obviously, the intent of a policy like this is that you're trying to, draw people in and establish that. Great point, and I would suggest that maybe council take a look at this policy.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you.
Anyone else before I make a brief comment? Councillor Carmichael can attest to this. A year or so after this came to council and we approved it, we too said we probably need to take another look at this because, anytime the idea was that we wanted to encourage people to come in, which is, a bona fide idea, right? We do want people to come in. And then we started to come into situations where did the person actually move in? Did they have? Then we said, well, we don't get many that come with children, so then we decided that we would, offer more to those who had children with them. So maybe it's a good time to actually review the policy itself, right? It's been on the books long enough that I think we can take a look at it, see if there are some things we want to improve, see if there are any loopholes we need to close. And if there's anything you want to add to it, would everyone on council be okay with that suggestion? Okay, so we have a motion on the table, and we'll address the motion now if no one else has any comments. Motion 2021-06-21-76 in terms of the economic development bylaw and the residential grant. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Motion is passed unanimously. Okay, 7.1.3, the tender award, CAO Lee, sorry.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this tender is for the replacement of the HVAC units on top of the rec center. This project was identified in something called the Capital Investment Plan, I believe, which is a plan that is implemented by the province. Municipalities have to build this plan in order to be eligible for the gas tax fund. The gas tax fund, I almost screwed that up, is a federal fund that comes to municipalities specific to infrastructure in the communities. So the way that this program works is council will approve a plan. It gets submitted to the province. The province will then approve the plan. And from that point, they will incrementally provide funding to the municipality to allow for these projects to be done. This particular project was actually in a previous plan that was built back in 2014, I believe, 2015. So it's one of the lingering projects from a previous plan. We've already received the funding to do it, so this is not coming out of our operational budget. It has gone through the tendering process. Roy Consultants overseen that process, and the low bidder on the project did come in under the construction estimate for it. Therefore, Roy Consultants is making the recommendation to award this tender to the lowest bidder. So we have motion 2177.
Okay, thank you, council members. I would ask, because we're really pushing the time, we do have a time limit according to our procedure. So let's get to the motion first, and then we'll see if there's any discussion. So the motion is 2021-06-21-77. The recommendation from Roy Consultants concerning the rooftop units, as you see there. Do we have a mover?
I move that As per recommendation of engineering firm Roy Consultant, Beldoon Council awards the tender for the replacement of rooftop unit of the Beldoon Recreational and Cultural Center to the lowest bidder, Carmichael Engineering Limited, not family, for the sum of $64,788.70, HST included.
Do we have a seconder?
I'll second that motion.
Thank you, Council Berg. So on the question,
I just have one question.
Councilor Robinson?
Sorry. In the recommendation letter from Roy Consultants, looking at the tender opening report, under one of the tenderers, it says they're not on the bidders list. Why would that be? And how does a business get on the bidders list? Why would they not be on the bidders list? So if a tender is open, why cannot any contractor who can do that work bid on the job?
So Roy Engineers, which again, we're going to arrange for them to come in. They do a lot of our engineering and they would be able to speak to it in more detail. But my understanding of the process is that they actually build tender packages that the companies need to come in and purchase and be put on the tender list. When they purchase that, they go onto the tender list. They go onto the approved, if they somehow receive that material through a different means, and they either didn't pay for it or they didn't go through the proper channels, they need to register themselves with Roy Consultants prior to being able to bid on it. The details around that, I'm sure that they could definitely elaborate on, but that's my understanding in their process.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to more information on that process.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay, we will move to the motion then. So that's motion 2021-06-21-77. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say nay. Passed unanimously. CAO Lee.
Okay, my next item, and hopefully this isn't a huge one. I'll try to keep it as concise as we can. We are in this situation right now where we've got two different cleaning contracts, two different contractors that we're looking to combine all of the municipal services into one contract. While we were going through that process, with some of the obligations that go along with one of the contracts, such as our caretaking component of it, which is, just to highlight that, that's where if there's the use of the rec center, then we have one of our cleaners that actually goes and opens up after hours or closes down after hours. When we were going through the process of really cleaning this up and then getting this under one contract, we started to realize that this is the RFP that we were going to issue for this was a pretty robust RFP, and it contained a lot that made it difficult for contractors to bid on. Through the genesis of it, we started weighing the capability of potentially bringing on an employee. So I know that I got a lot of information. I've put it out to council on this. I don't want to waste too much time in going sort of reiterating that. But what we are looking for is I'd like a little bit of directive. If council has an opinion on if we should maintain this as a contract, if there's an opinion on whether or not we could investigate moving this into an employee and a municipal employee situation. I know that from our side, especially with COVID, the onset of COVID, that really threw a wrench into a couple of things where it would have been nice to have that flexibility. And actually prior to COVID, we were doing some projects where we were actually having visitors and, different people, government officials coming in sort of last minute or the day before. So it would certainly be, I think that it would lend to some flexibility that we would have here. However, it was something that I wanted council, with you guys, being new to the position, I was looking forward to having some directive issued by council.
Okay, so before we go through discussion, I would just say, this is for tonight's purposes, I think this is a pretty straightforward sort of question that COE is asking us in terms of your preference as a council member, if I'm getting this right, and you can correct me, COE, if I'm wrong. Do we prefer contracting in this case as opposed to hiring a full-time employee? Is that fair? Okay, so that's basically the question. Now, I'm going to open it for discussion, but let's try and keep it on that narrow path. What is your particular preference because, and what is ours, a collective particular preference, because COE is looking for some direction on that. He has some opinion on that. He's also looking for some direction. Councillor Guitar-Mington, no.
I'm just going to sit back and listen to everybody's input on this because this is a little bit over me right now. Thanks.
That's fair. Councillor Carmichael?
We're spending the money out, and every 2 to 3 years, we need to bring out a contract when we have contractors. I think a hire would probably work better, and would have somebody here every day or whatever day is scheduled, and then we'd have that person in other areas. If it was a difference in the money, then I would hesitate, but where I see that it seems to be about the same price, I think hires are not a bad idea.
Thank you, Councillor Carrier.
Okay, first off, don't we already have somebody as a cleaning person as an employee? Jeannie? Does she not clean the rec center?
Yeah, but Jeannie operates on the contract. Jeannie's on a contract, and Rachel Gagne, I believe, is on a contract. So we've got 2 different contractors on 2 different cleaning contracts.
And what about both fire halls? Who's looking after those?
So that the one fire hall is part of Jeannie's contract, and the other one right now we were looking to add into the contract, which needed to be. And apologies to Marilyn. This is something that it is definitely very heavy, but it was just the timing of it, because we didn't expect 2 years ago that this would sort of lapse right when a new council was coming in. So I do appreciate that it is a heavy topic.
So here's just my perspective of it is that currently, and I realize that when the original cleaning contract was probably taken out for this building in particular, it wasn't open the way it is now. There was, I don't even know if our offices were in here yet, but from what I've seen, once a week is not sufficient for this building. So I don't know if one employee will be able to keep up with all of these buildings that we're talking about. And if not, well, now we're looking at doubling what we've put out here. And the other side of that is that, okay, so now if it's an employee, now we're looking at benefits and vacation time, and what do we do when this person goes on vacation? So there's some other things there that I think we need to look at as well. So I don't know how how quickly a decision can be made on this, given some of the information that we're going to be needing to make this decision. However, I do need to stress that this building needs to continue to be cleaned in the meantime while we're waiting for this decision to be made. But yeah, I think that there's some things that need to be looked at as to how often these other buildings need to be cleaned. The 2 fire halls, we have somebody renting up there now as well, from what I understand. So is the contract also going to cover the fireman side? So yeah, I think there's some things that need to be looked at before we can make an informed decision.
Councillor Robinson?
Yeah, I agree with what Councillor Corey just said. There's a lot of information I think that's missing from the email that was sent out by CAO Lee. And if we're looking at contract, there are a number of people who are employed that are suddenly out of work in a village that doesn't have a whole lot of employment opportunities. So I think that's something we need to consider as well. And if it's at the same price, then maybe the contract is the way to go, so that everybody at least gets some piece of the pie.
Councillor Burke?
Yeah, I think from where I sit, I believe we're better off with an employee. I say that in the sense that when you have a contractor, yes, we can terminate a contractor, or a contractor can say they no longer want to do the work. I believe if they give 90 days notice or something like that. With that said, an employee isn't going to give you 90 days notice. They may leave, but the other side of the coin is we can replace them immediately. Now, with that all said, I just believe that an employee, we have a facility here that we're under COVID regulations, and nothing's to say we can't go back into that situation anytime soon. For the pricing and the cost, I believe at this stage, the municipalities reached the stage that we need a full-time employee to look after the facility.
Okay, any other council members wish to make a point before, I'll make one, and I'll leave it at that, but any other council members wish to make a point? The only, and I was thinking about this today it's a good discussion to have, just, it's nice to be able to spread the work out. And to have, we're kind of in a spot where we, it's tough to find jobs. So on the other hand, to the council members who said having one employee is the way to go, they've brought forth their arguments in a particular way too. So, to be honest with you, with this one, I'm not particularly sure how we go forward. I do know that if we are going to go to any sort of tender process, and I put this under Councillor Carrier's thing too, I think we have to make sure our tendering process and our procurement process is solid before we make any of those moves. That way, everything is done the way it should be. So I guess we move the discussion forward. There seems to be sort of a split in the way we go forward with this. So I'll leave it with CAO Lee to carry the conversation forward. Councillor Carrier, if you have a point, you're welcome to it.
I just forgot to mention, this cleaning contract that you're talking about, would that include cleaning services for the people who are renting in this building?
It could, if council wanted to include it. Yeah, I mean, it'll include anything that council wants to include or not include.
So can you tell me then, currently, does the RCMP, does their cleaning people have access to the janitorial closet that is right out here where they are able to fill and empty a mop bucket?
I don't believe so, no. I think that the janitorial closet is only available to the municipal cleaning contractor, I believe.
Okay, Councillor Guitar McDonnell, did you want to say something? You just want to wait?
No, I'm fine, thanks.
So maybe we carry this discussion forward. I think we have to. CAO Lee, maybe in the next couple of weeks, if you want to continue with this until we sort of come to some sort of, I think as we whittle away at this and we keep talking, we'll come to some sort of general consensus. And that's what we want to do. Okay, so we're at 9:32 and we're moving along to the NB power line extension from Smear Road. And this is this a discussion as well? Just
Mr. Mayor?
sorry.
Just a question. You made reference to that there is a time frame or a time limit. What is that time
Well,
limit?
I always thought we had in the procedural bylaw that there was a 10 o'clock time limit.
Okay.
And we're knocking on the door, so, and we still have some business to do. The NB power line extension, Smear Road.
Right, so we have received a request from a resident who lives down at the end of Smear Road East, which extends from Main Street towards the water. The resident currently does not have power in their home or in their cottage, I suppose it would be. So they did request whether or not the municipality could run power down Smear Road East. Now, currently, The power only extends, I believe, around 125 meters. In order to bring this to council, we asked for NB Power to provide a quote to take the power all the way to the end of the street. Now, I just want to make sure that council is aware, the obligation to run power down the road comes with the developer of the road. So when the road is developed, that's where the obligation comes in. This road was developed years ago. I would anticipate probably by the province, and then it was moved over. So there is not an obligation to do it. Where that leaves the resident, I would think that there might be other means for them. I haven't gone down that path, but what I am looking for direction on is whether or not council wants to entertain this. It is a pretty hefty price tag that comes along with this. The only other request that we have received in the past along these same lines was in the industrial park, but the purchase agreement that went along with that did specify that power would be provided. This is a bit of a different situation where it seems to be a seasonal cottage, and the advice that I've received from legal is that there actually isn't an obligation to do it. It would be at the discretion of council.
Okay, thank you. So we have a situation where we're not obligated, but we have the mandate to approve if we so wish. So just very quickly, council, if you have something to say, but perhaps just a no or yes along these lines, or we carry this to another time, I suppose we can do that as well. But if you could make your opinions known, then we can move on. Councilor Burke.
I do own a cottage on the Jacket River. Bring the power in was 1 kilometer long. 90% of it was along a public road. However, we paid it and paid NB Power out of our own pocket. So with that said, I don't feel any differently here.
Councilor Burke is a no. Councilor Robinson.
Yeah, I agree with Councillor Burke. It's not, it's a resident or a developer responsibility to provide power to their property. So I don't see why, and it's not just, it wouldn't be just the cost of the lines. There's bush clearing and all things attached to that. So the estimate that we have is not a true reflection of the final cost of the village. So I think it's a resident responsibility and should remain so.
Councilor Carrier.
I agree with those statements as well. I think that we run the risk then of setting a precedent. So are we going to do this for anybody and everybody who wants to put a cottage somewhere? That would be my concern.
Thank you, Councilor Carmichael.
It's a hard decision for me. I understand all the facts here. It's going to cost a lot of money. But as the lawyer said, we're not responsible for that. So it's our decision. So.
Councilor Guitar McDonnell.
I think it also should be the responsibility of the owner of the residence. It's just the way it is, I think. So, yeah. Unfortunately, yes.
Yeah, that's right. And that's probably the best way to put it. So Councilor or CO Lee, does that suffice? Thank you. So I think the last one, we're moving to the office space request. Is that correct?
Yes, and all I'm really looking for from council on this is that we do have a request that came in for the last available office space in this building. So what the process was previously, and really it's the process that the previous council used kind of in all proposals that they received, was the triggering mechanism in order to get any, whether it's a business or whatever it is, the triggering mechanism to get that file to council is that they submit a proposal. So that's what's been done here. There was a potential business that is interested in the space. I've asked for them to provide a proposal. The proposal is very, very basic. Generally, what would normally happen is I would be aware of what council wants to see in a proposal, the economic development benefits, if they're going to be bringing in employees, different things like that. So in this instance, what I'm looking for from council is I've received in a proposal. I'd like some direction on how we move the proposal forward. If it's something that, right from the hop, you would like for the proponent to come in and meet with council to explain what the business that they're looking to put in here. Actually, Christy would be able to speak to this a little bit as well, because she went through the process. The way that it's sort of structured right now is that a proponent comes in, meets with council deliberates if they want to move forward with the project. They would give the green light to the proponent. We would put them in touch with the designer, and the space would be designed to their specifications. After which, the previous council has passed a motion that establishes the rate of the rooms over there. So after that was completed, then the proponent would start paying a monthly rent. So that's sort of the process that was established previously. So I'm just looking for council to direct staff on how you want for us to engage this proponent and move this, not just this proposal, but any proposal in general, if that's the process.
Okay, we can start with Councilor Guitar-McDonald. I think Councilor CEO Lee mentioned perhaps having the applicant come in. Maybe that's where we start, but I'll leave that with
Yeah.
you.
I agree. I'd like to hear more about her plan and see where we can move forward. It sounds interesting, so yes, definitely have her come in and make a presentation, and we'll take it from there.
Councilor Carmichael?
I feel the same. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Carrier?
I, as somebody who's had to go through this process, have no idea why that is the process. The building was built and renovated at a cost of over $4 million to be able to provide space for people to rent. I don't understand why there's all of these hoops and a presentation and all of this stuff. I mean, we have a CAO here who's perfectly capable of meeting with someone, finding out what they want to use the space for. If it's a legal operating business that is not going to disrupt the flow of this building, I don't understand who are we to pick and choose who can or can't open up a business here? Do you know what I mean? Like, I just feel like, why would they have to give us all of this information? She wants to open this business. Why wouldn't we let her? We have an empty space here. We're looking to recoup some money here from what we've spent on this building. I think it's a great idea.
So, and that's a Bonavide point of view. Am I getting from you that you would just as soon leave this in CLE's, like, how do we go about, because I think he's looking actually for future direction too, right?
Yes, and yeah, and like what I'm suggesting is that when someone comes and they want to rent space, shoot off an email to us, let us know, hey, we have somebody interested in this space. They want to come and look at it at such and such a date. If any of us are interested in going and meeting with them when they're here to look at the space and give us the information, great. And I mean, I think he's capable into determining whether it's a good fit for the building. I think I was a good fit for the building, and I don't think it should have taken as long as what it did. And we should also stipulate exactly how it is the renters are supposed to show their appreciation.
Okay, I'll just add one thing. We do have a portfolio specifically deeded for facilities.
Okay?
Councilor Burke is the lead in that, along with CEO Lee.
Okay.
So maybe, we talk about initiatives, that's an initiative. So perhaps we leave it with them for the moment, for them to come back to us and perhaps say, this is something that we think is a good idea or not. I'm just throwing that out there as a possibility. Others may say, but if we have someone dealing with that portfolio and we're talking about initiatives, wouldn't that come under the definition of an initiative?
Possibly, but I kind of think that as council, we are sending mixed signals by saying we support small businesses and we want economic growth, but, oh, you want to set up a business here? Let's just wait. Tell me everything you want to do first, and then we're going to see, and we're going to talk about it, and we're going to, like, I don't agree with that.
Councilor Robinson?
Yeah, I think the process should be streamlined a little bit for businesses coming in and wanting to rent space. I'm curious about design fees and renovation fees and who's on the hook for those types of expenses, because I don't know that that somebody's going to be able to just move into an office space, depending on what kind of business they're opening. So just curious about those kinds of issues.
Council Work, and then I'll just maybe finish up.
Yeah, Mayor Arsenault has already indicated that I'm on that committee, and I have no problem indicating to council exactly where my train of thought is going. At the end of the day, the Village of Beldoon needs to establish a cost per square foot to rent a facility. There's the office, or there's the space. That space costs this many dollars. You want to renovate, you renovate to your heart's content, you know, that type of thing, but you're paying. Also, the last item that I believe we need is that is an electric meter in each facility. You know, when you turn around and start talking about the cost of electricity and what is going to happen in the future, you know, they can run their air conditioning all summer long at our expense, and they can run their heaters all winter long at our expense. And on top of all that, we have no idea how much it's costing us. So that is an area that I'll be going to very quickly. So that's my train of thought.
Okay, thank you. I don't know if we've really come to any consensus here, to be honest with you. Excuse me. We seem to have a train of thought that says we need to streamline, right, the parameters that we have. And we also have a couple of members who is saying, in this particular case, they'd like to hear from the applicant, which I think is probably fair. But I also agree, I think there's some middle ground there. I don't know. What do we do?
Let CAO look after it.
Okay. Councilor Burt?
I'll agree with that. At the end of the day, the CAO is accountable to council, and his decisions will be live or die by. And with that said, you know, that's the process, and I have no issues with council saying, you know, that once a decision's made, who's coming and having information, that type of thing. But I believe the CAO should be accountable to council for the decisions of who's coming and who's going.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I think there has to be some due diligence. I think everyone would agree with that. And I agree with Councilor Carmichael, when it gets tough, CAO, it's on you. Okay, so that takes us through council members. Clerk Treasurer Cormier has some financial reports for us.
Mr. Mayor, if you wish, I could summarize everybody has the documents, but I could summarize, instead of going line by line this time.
Sure.
Because of timing, we could try to get through this a little bit quicker.
Yeah.
Okay. I will do the utility operating fund from May 1st to the 31st, 2021. We had a balance that was carried from April of $15,022.91. With the deposits we had, we ended up with $9,652.25. We had checks and other expenses that were issued for $5,727.78. We had checks that had cleared in April and some that were still outstanding in May. And with those, it left a current account balance at the end of May of, in the general utility operating fund of $18,905.96. We have a capital reserve account balance of $54,033.25, an operating reserve account balance of $6,895.95, and a trust account balance of $28,554.40. There were no accounts payable at the end of May. That should have been paid, by the way. And the accounts receivable, we still have a 2020 on the residential side of $150, and on the 2021 for the January to March, we have a $125 receivable. From the April to June on the residential, a $750 receivable, and up to May on the industrial, $4,370.86. In the general operating fund, we had a balance that was carried forward from April of $816,136.83. We had total deposits of $489,323.98. With the checks and other expenses that were take place in May, there was $548,872.95. Again, we had checks that were outstanding in April that cleared, and we still had checks outstanding at the end of May. So the current account balance at the end of May was $709,928.04. The capital reserve account balance is $2,645,811.18. The capital operating reserve account balance is $201,978.93, and the gas tax fund was at $628,187.35. We had accounts payable at the end of May of $3,928.33. The receivables, there's a 2019 receivable of $115, which after the audit, everything will be written off. And in 2021, we have receivables of $817.50. You'll note that in below, there's due from the general operating fund from the general operating reserve was $1,495. It got deposited to the incorrect account, so I just have to transfer it back. So you will see a difference in the capital operating reserve in June. Normally I go through this by detail, but again, in the interest of time, I'm trying to get through. All your reports are attached, and you just have the motion before you.
Okay, so the motion to accept the financial reports, 2021-06-21-78. Do we have a mover?
I'll move that the financial report be accepted as presented and the accounts payable be paid.
A seconder?
I second.
Seconded by Councillor Guitar-Macdonell. On the question? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Motion passed. Which takes us down to bylaws and policies. Before I move on to the election of deputy mayor, I just want to thank all the work that CAO Lee did. And Clerk Treasurer Cormier's agendas are immaculate. They're just professionally done, and all the information have to tip the cap there, because that's so easy to work with when you have all that information, right? So thank you very much to you both. Now we're on to the election of deputy mayor, I believe. If I remember in 2016, I believe what we did is we just, we had we had a council member nominate another council member. And if that council member accepted, we went around until I think there were 2 or 3 that had accepted in 2016, and then we had a vote. So I believe we can do the same here. Do we have any nominations for deputy mayor?
I would like to nominate Councillor Carmichael, if I could, please.
Absolutely.
She comes with experience after being on last council, so I think it's a good opportunity.
Thank you, Councillor Guitar-Macdonell. Councillor Carmichael, do you accept that nomination?
I do.
Councillor Carmichael accepts the nominations. Do we have any other nominations on the floor?
I will nominate Councillor Burke. I think he filled the role as mayor, as deputy mayor, and would serve us well.
Councillor Burke, do you accept the nomination?
I do.
At this point, we can, are there any other nominations? Okay, we will now move to a vote. Those in favor of Councillor Carmichael as the next deputy mayor, please say aye.
Aye.
Councillor Guitar-Macdonell and Councillor Carmichael vote for Councillor Carmichael. Those in favor of Councillor Burke as the deputy mayor, say aye. Councillor Burke, Councillor Robinson, and Councillor Carrier vote for Councillor Burke. That's 3-2. Councillor Burke is our new deputy mayor. Congratulations to you. Thank you, Councillor Carmichael, for putting your name up. I believe that the motion? Sorry, now, we move to the motion for the election of deputy mayor, 2021-06-21-79, that in accordance with section C2, subsection 2 of the Village of Beldoon bylaw, regulating the proceeding of council, Councillor Burke be appointed as deputy mayor. Do I have a mover?
I'll make the motion.
Councillor Robinson moves that motion 2021-06-21-79 be moved. Do we have a seconder?
I'll second it.
Councillor Carrier seconds the motion. All those in favor of the motion say aye. All those opposed say nay.
I'll say aye. I'm not going to be a sore loser. Congratulations, Ron.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Motion was approved unanimously. Congratulations, Councillor Burke.
Just if I may.
Yep.
Councilor Carmichael, please do not feel that you were a loser, because at the end of the day, I am running for deputy mayor at this moment in time strictly to bring the experience that I have had on council in my previous 3 terms. I will not be the deputy mayor for the 4 years we are here. So, I'm hoping that as time goes by, other council members will feel comfortable and recognize that it has certain duties and certain things to do. But the other side of the coin is that experience will be adamant to a brand new council like this. So I thank council for their support in voting for me. But with that said, there will be other deputy mayors before the end of this term.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Burke. So we move on. Motions and resolutions, general correspondence.
We have correspondence in, we have the Shillong Regional Service Commission planning a tentative subdivision plan, Restigouche Street, municipal property, industrial park. And then and DTI 5-year municipal designated highway program. Both of those may require response from council. It was more information, I guess, that the one was the CRSC was the information to say that they had the committee that a variance request for the width of a remnant be approved as presented. So that was information.
Okay.
And the other Department of Transportation, the 5-year designated program, I believe CAO Lee has that handled.
Okay, did you want to speak to that, Cioli?
Just very briefly, our 5-year plan, whenever the funding comes from that department, if the funding is not issued that year, we simply roll the plan into the next year. We didn't receive funding for the plan last year, so we simply roll the 5-year plan into the next 5 years. So there really isn't any work to be done on that, but we can, if it hasn't been already, we'll distribute that to council.
Okay, thank you. Have you included 10.2 in that discussion? Are we ready for the? Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
For the rest of the year, information correspondence is the Restigouche SPCA report for May, the Atlantic Railway Maintenance Inc. track inspection for April, the Shillong Regional Service Commission planning subdivision plan 4117 Main Street. Again, that was just a notification. A COA application for assistance. That was just to assign a project number. A Department of Environment and Local Government, Honorable Anna, thank you for the service to the former council members. And the Healthy Forest Partnership Prevention of Spruce Bloodworm. We had thank yous that came in from the DRHS 2021 grads for the grant that was given last month. And the Chudmont Foundation, congratulations to Mayor and Council, and that again is the, just for the new council, and I believe I provided a copy of that to you. Magazine, Infrastructure Magazine, and Our Voice, the End of Mental Health Illness Magazine.
Okay, thank you, Clerk Treasurer Cormier. That wraps up the general correspondence. So we're ready for, did you do the, so you're finished with the correspondence, eh, Clerk Treasurer? Okay. The closed session, we'll put that off. It's late, and we can do that through another forum. So the adjournment of tonight's meeting, can we have a mover and a seconder, please?
I move that the meeting adjourn at 9:59 PM.
Under the wire. Seconder?
I'll second the motion.
On the question? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say nay. Motion moved. Thank you, everyone, for watching at home, and thank you, council and administration.